In the heart of colonial Virginia, nestled between rolling tobacco fields and the whispers of the Potomac River, a boy was born who would one day change the course of history. George Washington entered the world on February 22, 1732, at Pope's Creek Estate. His beginnings were modest, far from the grandeur his name would eventually evoke. His father, Augustine Washington, was a landowner of some repute, but not wealth. His mother, Mary Ball Washington, was a stern, devout woman, embodying discipline and determination. Young George's life was rooted in simplicity. He spent his early years exploring the wilderness, his imagination running wild among the trees, as though nature herself whispered secrets of leadership into his eager ears. Could a boy who once fished in muddy creeks and climbed apple trees grow into a man who would command armies and shape a nation? When George was just 11, tragedy struck like a summer lightning storm. His father died. The loss hurled the Washington family into financial uncertainty. Dreams of an English education vanished like smoke in the wind. But hardship has a strange way of sculpting greatness. Instead of crumbling, George hardened like iron under fire. He studied surveying and learned the language of the land, its curves, its heights, its secrets. It was during his teenage years that ambition bloomed like a wildflower after rain. At just 17, George became the official surveyor of Culpeper County. With every mile he walked, he carved not just maps, but a vision of destiny. Yet beneath the calculated exterior, a tempest brewed. He longed for validation, for honor. Would fate answer his yearning? The crucible of war would be his answer. As tensions between the British and French flared in the Ohio Valley, Washington stepped onto the stage of history. At only 22, he was entrusted with a dangerous mission, to deliver a message demanding the French vacate the territory. The journey was perilous, icy rivers, treacherous terrain, hostile encounters. But Washington endured. The mission ended in failure, yet it lit the first spark of his legend. Soon after, at the Battle of Fort Necessity, his forces were overwhelmed. He signed a surrender, an embarrassment that could have ended a career. But instead, it was the forge that tempered his resolve. Have not all great leaders stumbled before they soared? After the French and Indian War, Washington returned to Mount Vernon, his family estate. He married the wealthy widow Martha Custis, securing not just love but social standing. For a time, he turned away from the clamor of battle, tending instead to fields, finances, and family. But the soil of Virginia could not quiet the beating drum in his chest. As British policies grew increasingly oppressive, taxing the colonies and denying them representation, discontent simmered. Washington watched, waited. Was he not a subject of the crown? And yet, why did he feel shackled? These years were the stillness before the storm, the calm eye of a hurricane. When revolution came, it was not with fanfare, but with fire. The colonies burned with anger, and Washington, with quiet conviction, stepped forward. In 1775, he was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He accepted not with pride, but with a solemn sense of duty, as though the mantle of leadership had always been stitched into his soul. The war was not glorious. His troops were underfed, underpaid, and underprepared. He suffered defeats, endured betrayal, and trudged through icy winters at Valley Forge. But like a lighthouse amidst raging seas, Washington stood unwavering. His presence became a symbol, a man of flesh and blood who bore the weight of liberty on his shoulders. Imagine the frigid wind biting at your cheeks, your boots soaked through, your belly hollow. This was Valley Forge. In that bitter winter, Washington forged not just an army, but a nation's spirit. He inspired loyalty not through fear, but through example. He wrote letters by candlelight, consoled his men, and prayed beside them. Victory did not come swiftly. Years passed in blood and battle. But in 1781, with French assistance, Washington cornered the British at Yorktown. The world shifted. The colonies had won. And the man who could have seized power, who could have crowned himself king, resigned his commission and returned home. Why? Because true power lies not in ruling others, but in mastering oneself. Peace was fragile. The new nation wavered like a foal on its first legs. Factions bickered, the economy floundered, and old loyalties lingered. Many feared chaos would reclaim the land. But then, as if summoned by destiny, Washington was called back, not as a soldier, but as a unifier. In 1789, he was unanimously elected as the first President of the United States. The man who had once surveyed the wilderness now charted a course through untested political terrain. He shaped the office with restraint and dignity, refusing to be called Your Majesty, insisting instead on being addressed simply as Mr. President. Washington's presidency was not without trials, foreign entanglements, domestic unrest, and the burden of setting every precedent. Yet he led with patience, humility, and a deep sense of national purpose. He stepped down after 2 terms, establishing a peaceful transfer of power that would become a cornerstone of American democracy. As he left office, he warned against political factions and foreign entanglements in his farewell address, a voice of reason echoing through the ages. He returned once more to Mount Vernon, to the quiet rhythm of fields and family, where he died in 1799. But George Washington never truly left. What makes a hero? Is it birthright, fortune, or something more? George Washington's journey was not one of perfection, but of perseverance. He was a man of contradictions, stoic yet passionate, privileged yet self-made, fallible yet revered. Like an oak that weathered storm after storm, he rose from humble soil to stand tall and unshakable. He did not chase power, he carried responsibility. He did not demand reverence, he earned respect. In an era of empires and monarchs, he became something rare, a servant leader. And in doing so, he did not just lead a revolution, he became its soul. Ask yourself, what would have happened if he had not stepped forward? What if the boy beneath the trees had chosen silence instead of courage? The story of George Washington reminds us that greatness is not given, it is forged, choice by choice, in the fires of character and conviction. And for that, he is not merely remembered. He is immortal.